Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Student Services Committee meeting on April 3rd here in the boardroom. Can we verify that the meeting has been properly posted?
Yes, it was.
All right, thank you. Do we have any public comments this evening?
We do not.
Okay, let's move on into our first action item, which would be the approval of the Student Services minutes from March 4th. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Thank you.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Koenig. Any comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Excellent. Let's move on then to our discussion and possible action to approve a revision to policy 5340, student accidents, illness, and concussion. Mr. Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Zenobia. So this policy has been revised to reflect the best practices regarding the health, safety, and welfare of students. When a teacher or coach or any staff member determines a student is exhibiting signs, symptoms, or behavior consistent with a concussion or head injury, this revision is recommended for consistency with current best practice. So take a look at the policy, and these are Neola recommendations, and these recommendations came from 2023, so this policy hasn't been looked at in a couple of years from the recommendation component. As you take a look at it, it has added the updated policy 5330 that this committee went through in December around administration of medication emergency care. So you see that in the green. Remove some redundant language that was captured already, and then just kind of shortened it down for teachers and coaches, especially seeing the symptoms and removing a student from class or practice. And that was the gist of this. Additionally, it added some training aspects and language. So it really talks about the notification with our concussion protocols, some of the training for staff, that they will be trained properly. And that's what you see in the green, and that's kind of the synopsis of the changes in this policy.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Voigt.
I'd like to suggest the change, it was not on the agenda, but it's in the title here, that this is, 5340 is going to be student accidents, illness, concussion, and sudden cardiac arrest. I didn't realize the sudden cardiac arrest part was there until I got a chance to go into it in board docs to take a look at it. And because of that additional dimension to what's included in here, I would make a recommendation that we change the training that's recommended. Under accidents, the second paragraph there, it talks about the superintendent may provide for an in-service program on first aid and CPR procedures. And I think, especially in light of the fact that we have now certified Heart Smart schools, that we have a really effective training program for the use of automated external defibrillators, or AEDs. And just to add that on as well, because that is definitely part of what is happening in the school district of Waukesha right now.
Okay. I don't know if you'd want to maybe address that first at all. I don't know if it's my recollection that is or isn't covered under another policy.
Yeah, so I don't have any knowledge of where AEDs would be specifically covered under another policy. And we have a robust AED, for lack of a better term, system. So our nurses report back at the beginning of the year highlighted that and all the work we've done within our schools, obviously working with the Kai Lerner Foundation, and also Children's Hospital of Wisconsin and Project Adam to get defibrillators at all of our schools in the proper capacity, right? Our elementary schools that have multiple floors, there's multiple AEDs to meet that need. So that does exist. We are currently in the process of putting MERT teams in all of our schools where they are responding with the AEDs. Our athletic trainers have those AEDs as well. Oh, thank you, Jim, and Dr. Siebert. So we do have the AED in policy, Mr. Zenobia, and it is policy 8452. So if I it talks about what it is, and it talks about that they may enhance the school safety to have an AED placed in buildings within the district. It describes what that is, and then it says the superintendent shall develop guidelines that govern AEDs, including the use of AEDs, placement, training, oversight by the district's medical advisor, and the AED device will be located in school buildings for use by individuals with proper AED training.
Okay.
I do remember being trained in the use of AED one of my last years in the district. You still do provide that at some point, right? Like almost like every year or two, isn't there something that teachers need to go through in some sort of training? I do remember getting that the year before I left.
All of our teaching staff wouldn't be trained in AEDs, only
Right.
specific members of the MERT team would be trained in AEDs, or administrators who would be first responders.
Okay.
Mrs. Voigt?
But because we do have a really strong history of even changing the state legislature, the law, the Kyle-Lermer law that went into effect a couple years ago, School District of Waukesha has definitely been at the forefront in making sure that the AEDs are available in the schools. And just to mention the fact that it is another opportunity for teachers to be trained to be able to respond in that. I did some research after seeing this, since the policy was first written in 2017, and Dave Skogman was saved, during cardiac arrest in 2018 at West, a West student at that time. And they've since are saying that they've estimated 200 lives have been saved through the use of AEDs and being available. I think that's across the state.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Mr. Harlan.
So it speaks to the coaches removing players from the classroom or from the field. Is there anywhere that, or another policy that speaks about if that coach refuses to do that? I mean, it feels like it could be a touchy subject, and if they're trying to win the game, they want to keep the kid in there, the kid wants to stay in. Is there anything within the policy or another policy that might speak to that?
Yeah, I'm not sure as far as if a coach would decide to keep someone in. If the language doesn't exist, it would just be a process that upon finding out any details that would happen, there would be an inquiry or an investigation into really understanding the why. At our training staff, when it comes to athletic events, are right there. They have very strict protocols. I mean, I think in our society, the concussion aspect has definitely changed, but changed over the years, right, of maybe not dating myself when I was younger and how it was handled. So I know that there's robust procedures from our trainers, and our coaches follow WIA guidance and are trained to, in every season, to go through that, understand what is expected of them when it comes to concussions, signs, symptoms, and how they should proceed. So not sure if it exists in policy, but if it would not, that process would take place where if there's any concern that somebody would not have the health, safety, and best interest of a child in mind, we would want to take steps there for sure.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yep.
Kind of to that point, can you give us a little bit background on kind of what is the training? I'm sure at the high school level, especially, our coaches are well trained already to recognize concussions and other things that may happen while playing. But could you give us a little background on how that goes and what is some of the training that they receive?
Yeah, so it's twofold. They're required to do vector training around some first aid response, and that is knowing signs and symptoms of common things that happen, including concussions. But that's every couple of years. But every season, they have to go through the concussion protocol with the WIA as part of their training and knowledge as coaches, new and seasoned coaches as well. And really what their role is to recognize it and then follow through with our trainer, right? They're not experts by any means, but the recognition component of, hey, there's something not right? Everybody saw that there was a hit, what are the next steps or what should we do? They would want to keep that person out, obviously find the parent or find the trainer. At every event, there is a trainer of some sort, out of the other school's trainer or our own, obviously for our home event. So that's really their next steps is the recognition is key, and then making sure they get to the parents or proper medical personnel who are available.
Do we have EMTs ever at our events, football games? Are they always present or on occasion, or how does that work?
We do have them at some football games on occasion. I don't know the exact rationale as to why. Maybe some of the homecoming larger events that might be attended where there's more people and more chance of that, but not at all of our home games or all of the time.
Okay. And that would just provide another layer to recognizing, in this case, a concussion. Is that fair?
It could. Most of the time, our trainers are going to know the student athletes the best or have the most experience with, athletic programs and the symptoms through that. But they definitely could rely on any EMTs if they were there for additional support or evaluation.
Okay. So this is a discussion or action item, and, to your point, Mrs. Voigt, I'm not sure if perhaps we'd want to bring this back, maybe add a reference or,
It's basically adding a phrase as an amendment. Just to add that the fact that training is available and very robustly taken advantage of in the district. Just that the policy reflects the fact that we do have a great policy, a great procedure in place to address sudden cardiac arrest.
okay. Would you then want to motion that?
Sure.
And
Should I make a motion to make the amendment, or just make a motion to approve it with an amendment?
Do we just reference to the other policy, the AED policy, the one that speaks more clearly to the training? Is that,
Oh, we could reference that here, too.
I think all we need to do is cite it.
Yeah. Policy 8452, you said it was?
okay.
And that could even be like at the end, where, like the legal references, another related policy type of thing. But I was just wanting to mention the fact that, the in-service training that's available is definitely, available for AED training as well.
Sure. No, I think if we were to make that amendment with the reference in there, that would be satisfactory.
Okay. All right, so I move to approve the policy 5340, student accidents, illness, concussion, and sudden cardiac arrest, by adding the phrase at the end of sentence 2 under accidents that would add, and the use of automated external defibrillators, AEDs.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I thought we were just going to add this as a reference to an additional policy that exists that talks through the AED policy, right? Isn't that what we're doing, is just on the very bottom, adding like we do with the rest of the policies, that cross-reference policies?
I believe we were talking about both, but the motion was made to add the sentence.
Can you repeat the motion?
I move to, and I can add that policy kind of addition as well. I move to approve policy 5340, student accidents, illness, concussion, and sudden cardiac arrest, by adding a phrase to the end of the second sentence under accidents that would say, and the use of automated external defibrillators, or AEDs in parentheses, as well as adding reference to policy 8452 on AEDs.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, seconded by Mrs. Kozlowski. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Passes 5-0. All right. Let's then move on to our first discussion and information item this evening, which is role of the Director of Related Services.
Thank you, Mr. Zenobia. I'm going to call up Karen Knopf, who is our Director of Related Services. Last year, Ms. Ganderman started in the role of, so this is a new position for us this year, and wanted to have her come up and talk about all the things she does for the school district of Waukesha in this role. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Karen, and then you just have to click on that button in front of you and make that green. There you go.
All right, thank you for having me. I'm Karen Knopf. I was recently hired last year for the role of Director of Related Services, which is a newer role from my understanding, so it's morphing into a bigger, we started with a plan in the beginning of the year, and it's kind of morphing this year, and so I'm just going to explain a little bit about what I do. There is a PowerPoint. Do you guys have that? Okay.
I have a paper copy, and I will put it up on the screen.
Awesome, thank you. So I just wanted to start with an understanding of what Related Services is. And so Related Services is part of an IEP decision for students to receive more support, for them to, excuse me, to to be able to access their education. So if, it can be anything from audiology to speech-language pathologists, to interpreting services. So I have a list. If you could go to slide 3. That one right there. So there's an extensive list. This doesn't cover all of them. But as you can see, students have an opportunity to increase their access to education through numerous ways. So we are able to provide orientation and mobility services, physical therapy, nursing services, vision services, and assistive technology for all students who may need it. Can you click to the next one? So for our service providers, it's done in multiple ways. So I thought I would just show you ways that it's done in the schools. So sometimes it's a collaborative and consultative service, which could be anything from maybe they just consult on a quarterly basis, kind of like a check-in, to like a weekly basis to make sure that the team members have a better understanding of a variety of strategies that could be used throughout the day in order for the student to access. It can be done one-on-one in the classroom, or it can also be done in a pull-out service, which might be more like speech pathology, occupational therapy, physical therapy, might be done in a pull-out service. You can see that we have currently 29 speech pathologists, 4 occupational therapists, 2 physical therapists, 3 deaf and hard of hearing, and then we contract. That reminds me, we got to talk about the contract. We contract with the Waukesha County Special Education Consortium for our vision and our audiology services. And then, so that's just a portion of my job. And I just wanted you guys to see what else we do. So I also work with our private schools where we set up evaluations for their special education evaluation referrals. We also provide speech and language pathology services for some of the students. I work through the family engagement. Right now, we're making it more robust than it is. So I'm on the steering committee for Parents United, and I'm also on the planning committee for the Family Engagement Community of Practice for the state of Wisconsin, in order for us to have a better understanding of what we can bring to our district. We are also working through an audit, so it's a procedural compliance self-audit, so that we are looking through our evaluations in our IEPs. So for that, we'll have our Indicator 8 family survey, which will be going out very soon. And we'll be working through creating a team, and then we will be pulling random IEPs and evaluations to look through, just to help our special education teachers become better at writing them. And then next year, I already have future plans. I'd like to continue to build our family engagement. I know we had a very strong family engagement prior, but just with the lack of the grant and just for various reasons, reasons it has kind of gone down. So we're just going to continue to build that back up. We've got the PCSA audit. I'm also working with our special education teachers on literacy comprehension for all. So I'd like to build their capacity with teaching our most complex learners how to read. And then I'm working currently on a grant to bring to the school district so that we can develop more comprehensive evaluations for all of our students. Sorry, I'm super dry today. All of our students, so. Thank you. So that's my role in a very fast nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions for anybody.
Thank you. Mrs. Voigt.
I'm interested in the family engagement, because I know we did have a very robust program
We
at
did.
one point. Where are we at now, and what are some of the specific goals that you're trying to read?
Well, I spoke with WISPE in the beginning of the school year, just to see if we would be able to have access to the grant again. At that time, they felt that the answer was no, just because we were able to have it for so long. And they really wanted us to be able to braid our services. So I'm still in contact with the WISPE representatives. What I'd like to focus on is bringing back our liaisons and making sure that we have family liaisons for families as resources. I'd also like to figure out a way that we can start to have our community roundtable. I think they were called community roundtables before, but just to have an opportunity for families to come together in Waukesha to either talk about transition, what does that look like for my child beyond 21? What does it look like for early childhood, special education questions that they might have, reading suggestions. There's a whole variety of activities that we could bring our families in for. So I'd like to maybe start 2 or 3 activities for that for next year. Long term, I'd love to talk to all of our schools and see how our family engagement is going and see what they need and support. So that's kind of a long-term goal, but I'd like to start with our liaisons.
Mrs. Kozlowski, sorry, and then Mrs. Koenig.
Thank you. First, welcome back to the district.
Thanks.
It's great to have you back, and I've heard a lot of great things, so I appreciate the work that you're doing. And in the same as Mrs. Voigt, I'd like to highlight just on a couple of the things that you said in walking through all the different services. So there's 2 pieces as to really how you're helping families come into navigating an IEP at the onset. But then there's the other piece, and I think it is the community engagement, and this is one of those pieces that when you take a look at being a mom, and I'm very focused on my child, and especially when I'm transitioning either onto an IEP plan, potentially off of an IEP plan and re-engaging in that, but also moving from elementary to middle to high school, and who and how do I help and make sure that my child is doing there. I've heard a lot about the need for that and just giving parents that outreach and it doesn't necessarily have to be you or your staff.
Sure.
But another parent, call it the mentor family, the coach family that partners and holds them together to say, I don't know where to go or how to navigate. Has anybody else been in here? I think that is extremely critical and a big piece, just because IEPs are on the rise. They're individually unique and dynamic. And there's so many different scenarios on how we navigate our child. I'm really encouraged to
I
hear
like
where we're
that
starting.
idea.
But there's, it's called wrapping these kids and families in bubble wrap to help them every step of the way with all of that. It makes me happy to hear that we're moving that direction. So thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Mrs. Koenig.
Awesome, thank you. I think you mentioned it, just want to clarify, so you follow the students, the learners, all the way through high school and sometimes into the Waukesha Transition Academy, correct? What does that look like for those students that have now graduated and yet we're still working with to kind of prepare them for exiting, completely those services? What kinds of things do you find yourself involved in with the Waukesha Transition Academy?
So I'm fairly new to the Waukesha Transition Concussion Academy. I'm very familiar with my previous district. I worked very closely with them. I know that the Waukesha Academy works hard to build the independent skills and the work skills and the life skills. But unfortunately, I can't speak a lot about that academy. I know that they have occupational therapists that are there, physical therapists, speech pathologists, and that they do a lot of community outings to get them prepared. But I have pretty limited knowledge about the Waukesha one, though.
Okay, do you foresee, maybe like looking into next year, maybe doing a little bit more, kind of seeing if there's anywhere in there we could continue to wrap these young adults now as they're preparing to completely exit services in a lot of ways? Do you see maybe an outlet where we could start looking into, doing more at that point?
You mean tell me more about your question.
What I mean is, I know that these are students that have graduated, and yet they're still receiving services. And I'm just wondering, when it comes to, the family engagement and all the services, mentioned, how that looks maybe with those learners that are still
Gotcha.
with us, that are, again, preparing for, reaching the age of 21, and then moving on. I'm just wondering if there's anything that you're connected with there that supports them.
Yes, so with the Parents United and with the WISP, or with the Waukesha, the Wisconsin Community of whatever else I'm on, we talk a lot about that, like how to do the trusts and like what are other job opportunities out there. So I want to bring that to Waukesha. But I also would like to work very closely with Hadassah and Lisa about how do we expand the knowledge of transition from a very early age. Because when you have a student that's between 18 and 21, they have a significant disability. And so there's a lot of planning that has to take into place, and you can't start that when they're juniors in high school. So I really want to work closely with our directors on how do we bring that not only just to the middle school, but to the elementary school, so that conversation isn't a new conversation when they start high school. But it continually grows, because you can really only hear snippets sometimes as a parent, and so you need to hear it over and over again. So that I would like to see grow, and I know that our directors would too. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that I hear you say that, and I appreciate that, because being an employment specialist who works with those students every day, I can definitely, I agree with where your mind is going with that, and I can say that is definitely a need. So I'd love to hear that you're heading in that direction, because this is definitely a need for us
Yeah.
and for our students. Thank you.
Helpful.
Ms. Harlan, go ahead.
Thank you again for all the work that you are doing. Wanted to speak to the PCSA. So is that an annual audit? Is that?
It's every 5 years, and so all of our school districts in the state of in Wisconsin receive this audit, and so it's just a 5-year staggered audit that everybody has to go through. And based upon, so there's different components to it. So one, they audit they audit some evaluations, some IEPs. There's also the family survey, so the indicator 8 will go out. So I've been working with their coordinators to create it, and there's a list of questions basically asking, do you feel heard as a parent? How can we be better? And so it's just a self-reflective survey for the school district to receive from their families. And then there is also a behavioral component, and I think there's one more component. It's been a while since I've done it, and so this year when we go through it, we'll go through all of those pieces. We'll put together the team, and then based upon the district size is how many IEPs and how many evaluations that you go through. So then after you're pulled, you'll go through the paper component, but then you also go through the IEP and you make sure that it's actually happening in the school. So it's one thing to have it written really well, but then we need to make sure that it's being implemented. So that will be done in the fall. And so it's pretty intense, but you get a lot of really good information from it, and it happens every 5 years.
Thank you. That'd be great to see the
Yeah.
the
it'll be
difference
really
over the
nice.
last 5 years.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Trying to think of the last time we got that report. That is reported out to the board, correct? The results of the audit?
It may or may not have. Regardless, the student services would always use that as part of their next steps and actions, but we can look back to see if Dr. Cook had included it. It is, not every year, so it's hard to, but we can go back and look at it.
But yeah, the information helps us decide on our next action steps on like where do we really need to focus, and then we work from there.
Okay. You had also mentioned a grant. Do you
Yep.
have an idea of how much it's for, or?
Sure. So it's for speech pathologists specifically. It's 20,000 for the first year, 12,000 for the second year. The first year, a team of the grant members, there's, I know, a UW professor, and I can't remember who the other two team members are, but then they come to your district and they provide modules. So all of the speech pathologists would have to participate in a monthly module, and then an activity that would correlate with that module to show that they're doing an action part to it. And the grant team would come and speak not only to our speech pathologists on a monthly basis, but they'd also meet with a smaller group, which would consist of a lead SLP, myself, and a school psychologist, to make sure that we are wrapping around the speech pathologist so that they know that they are growing. I've talked to one of our previous speech pathologists who is a director, or she's a coordinator in Port Washington, I think. She's on her second year, and she has seen significant growth in her speech pathologist. And so I'm pretty excited about it. So this happens for a year, and then the second year, the workload kind of reduces a little bit, but they stay with you to help you make sure that you're providing the right assessments, that you have that you're able to help with eligibility, conversations with families, and it's a more dynamic assessment that you're providing versus just looking at maybe just a few of the numbers, but you're looking at the child as a whole. My hope is that we grow our speech pathologists so that they become leaders within our buildings to help build our special education staff as well. So I haven't gotten it yet, but we'll see.
Any final comments or questions? All right.
So I do want to add that we will be bringing some information on the PCSA when it's completed. That has been done in the past, and so we'll look at that format and make sure we provide our findings and how we're using that to continue to improve our practices.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you for coming. Excellent
Yeah,
presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for the water.
Our final discussion information item this evening is the academic and social behavior curriculum update.
Thank you, Mr. Zenobia. You all know Mr. Leonard, our Director of Student Services, and so he's going to kind of follow up from some earlier conversations this year regarding the piloting of our Navigate 360 program within our schools and this academic and social behavior curriculum that comes along with that, and I'll let him take it away. I know that I've shared some behavior data, and he's going to talk directly around that correlation as well as kind of a vision for where we're going to be moving with a viable curriculum around behavior, academic and social behavior. So take it away.
Thank you, sir. All right. Good evening. Thanks for having me back. For those who may be hearing this for the first time, this is an update to a program that was originally, a pilot program that was originally approved in August of last year, just prior to the start of this school year, where we wanted to pilot Navigate 360's Compass curriculum in the district, primarily in our middle schools. And so tonight, I'm here to share with you some of the data that has been gleaned from that process of pre and post, or pre and mid-year assessments. So I'll take you through those. So just as a reminder, the Compass curriculum for grades 6 through 8 includes weekly lessons on academic and social behaviors. Each lesson is related to one of the following competencies: self-management, self-awareness, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So these are things that we want to see in our students and grow over time. The screenshot that you have there is directly from the Compass Curriculum website. This is what a student would see. This particular one is on social media. Talks about beware what you share, so you think you know social media. Each lesson includes a brief pre-quiz, the lesson that includes the video that you see in the animation there, the post-quiz, and then there is a teacher guide that goes with each lesson. Lessons were selected through our middle school principals and our directors of teaching and learning and special education services to go through that once a week. They actually have far more lessons than we can cover in a year, so. The lessons can be completed independently by students or done in groups that are led by staff. So this is the next slide or a slide or two later on the previous lesson on social media. It talks about the learning objectives, the risks of sharing your personal information online, and identify strategies for safe and responsible online sharing, which makes me think of, and I don't know if any of you have had this experience, but in the last 2 weeks, I've got about 6 or 7 phishing texts about my past due account for iPass. Yeah, even though haven't, I know it's up to date because I see the billing and I haven't gone anywhere recently, so yeah, that's the kind of thing kids need to know. The students, in terms of the assessment, just to kind of take you through that, it's 32 questions. They did this at the start of the year, and they've done it recently, I believe, in early March. And it's to determine their proficiency in those competencies that we talked about before, like self-management. They've now completed it twice, and there'll be a final assessment at the end of the year, and the goal, of course, is to show growth over time. So what you see there in italics where it says, "Thanks so much for joining us in Compass Curriculum. Before we get started, we want to get to know you a little bit better. Please answer the questions below to let us know how easy or hard each of these things are for you personally." And so some of the questions are, these are 3 of the 32. How hard is it for you to respect a classmate's opinion during a disagreement? Very difficult, difficult, easy, or very easy. The next one is doing my schoolwork even when I do not feel like it. I think that's a pretty common one for kids. Very difficult, difficult, easy, or very easy. Knowing what people may be feeling by the look on their face. Difficult, easy, or very difficult. You'll notice that the answers get rotated through so that the students don't just click on the same one again and again. And actually, there are a few questions, I counted 2 today when I went through the assessment again. I hadn't seen it since the fall. There are a number of questions that frankly are just there to check to see that the kids are doing it and doing it correctly. So one of the questions, for example, is count to 10. Now, of course, we're talking 6th, 7th, and 8th graders here. We're not asking them if they really can count to 10 and how easy it is. They're clicking that particular one so that we can know that they're paying attention and they're actually filling it out correctly. So that's just another way to verify the data. So those are the types of questions that they get. Those questions fall into those various competency categories, and then from that, we can glean how they're doing overall. So here is some of the data. I apologize that the numbers are very small. I didn't kind of realize that when I was putting it together. So I'll just go through some of the main ones for you, some of the highlights. So for Butler's 6th grade, their greatest, overall, we're seeing a score increase. In some cases, the score increases have been really notable, and in some cases, they've been almost kind of stagnant, but they are going up a little bit. So for Butler's 6th grade, the greatest score increase was in self-awareness. So understanding yourself. In 7th grade, it was social awareness. So not just understanding yourself, but understanding those around you. And then for 8th grade, and this was a pretty significant increase at Butler, was in self-management. So that ability to do your classwork even when you don't want to. And we all know what that feels like and how that can be hard to teach to middle school students. So it's nice to see that over the time, that has shown an overall increase. At Horning Middle School, some of the same types of things. 6th grade, the greatest increase was in self-awareness, just like at Butler. 7th grade was in self-management. And then in 8th grade, it was also in self-management. So for whatever reason, that's been a point of pride for Horning. At Les Paul, in 6th grade, the 6th grade scores were a little bit lower. They were not quite as a dramatic increase, but they still did go up in 6th grade in self-awareness, 7th grade also in self-awareness, and in 8th in self-management. STEM Saratoga, 6th grade, it was relationship skills, which was interesting to me because if you've ever been to STEM, they're always working together. They're always working in teams and in groups. So to see that increase, the kids all get the same lessons. But maybe it's just sort of what's in the air around at Saratoga. When you walk in, you see them all working in little pods. It's nice to see. 7th grade was in self-awareness, was the highest increase, and in 8th grade, it was self-management. So we'll be looking for a correlation between this work and a decrease in overall behaviors. And Mr. Pat had talked at the end of first semester about what we're seeing in terms of behaviors. And this is specific to the middle schools, so we didn't look at the high school data here. So far for first semester, we did see a decreased use of out-of-school suspensions, a decreased use of in-school suspensions, decreased use of pre-expulsion, which is the level 3 offense. That's 5 days out of school suspension. That's when you get to meet with me, the big guy, as they call me, for obvious reasons. Decreased use of detentions and decreased use of the no pass list. So where students are not allowed to go, frankly, are not allowed to have a level of independence where they have to be escorted from place to place as needed. There has been an increased use of student conferences or warnings, which is fine. You know, that's sort of the lowest level of intervention that we have. And to see an increase in that where, you know, the conversation takes place and then the behavior doesn't escalate from there. That's what we really want to see. So that's some of the brief data points. We'll come back at the end of the year, just with a more comprehensive review of the data on what we're seeing, both with with the Compass curriculum, with the behavior intervention program, and then also with the PBIS rewards program that the middle schools are working with this year for the first time, and has shown some really interesting results. So, any questions? Yes?
Where is the lesson taught? Is it like in a regular classroom, or do they have like a homeroom?
It's during their advisory homeroom. We've changed the name a couple times, I'm sorry, I don't remember. I believe it's the homeroom period. It's a dedicated, they have it once, they have it 5 days a week, and it's 1 day a week that we work on this. Yeah.
Okay.
For 30 minutes.
Did you have something?
I don't know if it's so much it's an observation, and I'm just wondering. I think it's fascinating that almost, every area of improvement significantly is the self-management score.
Yep.
I just wonder, how much of that over the last year or two has to do with having a nice structured, viable curriculum that will probably support the idea of, managing, your assignments, your work, just having that structure. I'm just wondering out loud, but it's just very interesting that you would have such a growth across the board in that area, and I just wonder how much of that may play into the idea that there is structure.
Yeah,
And I think that's very important because it does spill over into so many other areas, and this kind of, in my mind, supports that.
yeah, and while I don't have data to back that up,
Right.
I do think, and that's, part of what we talked about with this program as a whole, both here for Compass curriculum and also for the behavioral interventions, which we're continuing to roll out. It's an extension of the guaranteed and viable curriculum. Yeah. It's the idea, when no is not enough, then we need something more. And although I have seen teachers, and I'm sure you have as well, who have an amazing toolbox in their brain that allows them to respond to a variety of different behavioral systems or situations. Not everyone has that, especially our younger and newer teachers. And so what we're attempting to do with all of this is to give them those tools so that they can develop that over time and manage those issues as they come up in their own. And for the kids to have, one of the lessons is how to be an upstander. And that is someone who stands up for their peers in a situation, whether it's, the argument before it escalates. And that's a skill, and there also has to be sort of a level of empowerment for kids to feel like, I can step into this because I know what to do, and I know I can make a difference. And that's what we hope to see in our students, right? Is that ability to step in where needed and to lead. So.
Go ahead, Mr. Harlan.
So you had mentioned that the lessons could be completed either independently or in small groups. Who is it? The students are saying, I want to do it independently, or is it usually the teacher?
It's led by the teacher in that homeroom. I do know that STEM in particular asked for, there's a different way to set it up when you first set up the program itself. And STEM said, we would like to do more of the group-led curriculum where the teacher is walking the students through, they're watching the video together, they're discussing the video. I mean, you could really do it either way. We initially set it up for that independent work, and that's just because with the understanding that students are absent, things happen. There's nothing about the lessons that they really can't accomplish on their own. They can do the pre and the post test. Of course, if they have questions, they can ask their teachers, but what I have found, actually, some of the feedback that we're getting from staff is it does at times lend itself to discussion when you're talking about things like social media or about, personal safety on the internet, things like that. And so the teachers will step in with, just like the example that I had of this is what can happen if you're not careful about this type of information.
Do you feel like there was any statistical difference in the scoring between the group-led versus the more individual?
Well, it is interesting that for STEM, for sixth grade, it was relationship skills that went up a bit. I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not. And, one of the pieces of feedback that we could ask as we move forward is, would we like a more teacher-led model, or would you prefer to have the students, would the students prefer to do it independently? When we did it, we were rolling out something new, and I think we were trying to manage expectations and time of teachers. Although if you look at and I didn't put a screenshot of it up, but if you look at the teacher guide, it's one page. I mean, they're not, there's not a lot that a teacher would have to read and understand to be able to give the lesson. It goes pretty quickly. But that's something we can certainly look at for the future, is what model would work best for us.
It's great to see all the behaviors that have decreased. And kind of to Mrs. Canning's point, I know we want to attribute a large part here to this Navigate 360, but are there other factors that you've seen? I mean, I know we've been trying to make things more uniform everywhere, so I would think that would be a big help. But
Yep. I do think there is consistency across buildings in terms of responses to behaviors from leadership. We've done, the last 3 years, we've done discipline norming. We have our EMLSS committee that has brought in staff from across all the various buildings. And not just building leadership, but also, those who are working with the students on a daily basis, assistant principals, deans, behavioral specialists. And so, our study of the behavioral interventions texts, all of those things I think are helping us as we respond. It also takes parental support. And it takes the commitment of our students and the understanding of our students as to what those expectations are. And I think we have continued to improve in that area. I see it in, when we respond to something at any building, it's like, okay, well, how can we work to prevent this next time? Like, what tools do our students need to be able to avoid this kind of situation in the future? Because at no point do we want our kids to be with me, having those tough conversations. We want to avoid that as much as possible. So, things like cease and desist agreements when students are disagreeing. A lot of times that's at the high school level. But those proactive steps, I think, are helping.
Great. Any final thoughts or comments?
Look forward to the year end.
Yeah,
No, excellent report. We appreciate it. Thank you.
thank you. Have a good evening.
Our last order of business then is, are there any recommendations for future meetings? All right, seeing none. That will conclude our meeting for this evening. I believe we will be back here on May 5th, May 6th, Tuesday. Excellent. Thank you.